Now, tonight we're expecting Tom Hampshire to stop by for a little visit and to show us the progress on his Sato 72 Cardinal, which I'm really looking forward to seeing here. We're basically finished with the plane, except for some little details like making up the rest of the guns. And Les Dimmitt has been helping me with that part of it. But we're in a quagmire as far as the weather goes. We have had nothing but rain, and when it's not raining, the wind is blowing 100 miles an hour. So we're definitely not going to be flying this until we actually get a real day that we'll be happy with the weather. And one of the things we still have to do is figure out a way of getting it to the field. And that's one of the little projects we're going to work on as soon as we're going to do some work on Tom's plane tonight, but we still need to figure a realistic way of getting this in a Windstar, and hopefully without having to take it apart or making it any more cumbersome than it has to be. And that has yet to be proven. We don't know if that's if that's ever going to happen, but that's part of the challenge. So we're just going to hang out here, do our email and whatever until Tom gets here and get a look at his plane.
With a New York Central Alco FA, original first version black livery with gray and white stripes. And then I looked at it and talked to you about it. And we decided together that black paint was stupid in the hot summer sun because
you'll die.
And you'll cook it for good and all that. So we went to red. I wanted a dark red. As usual, if you want to know about paint, don't trust your instincts. Ask Wendy. Hello.
I don't think so. Blame him if it doesn't work out.
And we got Miss Ashley Red on it, which I think is going to have about the depth and the value.
Well, if it's like Mike's, it's got to be when you put the clear on. It jumps when you put the clear on.
Wow, Shazam!
Oh, I like the way the tail worked out too.
Yeah,
that's going to be fine. Now, you made a decision on lettering yet?
Well, what I would like, okay, and as you can see, Bill Blass hasn't called for fashion advice from you. No. Sure, that doesn't work. That's not how it is. What I think is just my favorite font is, you know, Railroad Gothic, just Roman lettering, Cardinal, bigger C here, and ANA 31919 there. That's the lettering the way I like it. What I haven't been able to decide on for sure, I don't think with all of this stuff going on that this thing really wants a lot of panel lines.
No.
It's busy enough now. We don't
wants to have lettering that's black outline and white, or white, you know, this lettering. It's somehow schematic in there.
Oh man, I've never done outline lettering
until tonight. See how quick he changed. Oh, geez, does that mean I have to do it?
You want to see my deer in the headlights imitation?
Yeah. It also, if you backmask the canopy again and just make the edges dark, it'll look 3 times different than it does right now.
I've tried that once and made a mess of it. You can see there's a masking error there.
Yeah, but that's because you had a lot of paint in it. That's not a problem to take care of that right now. That's no problem at all.
Okay. The way I've always done lettering is to cut a stencil out of frisket paper Lay it out carefully.
How does
put it down
frisket
with a heat
paper is
gun.
going to lay on? See, what I'm concerned with is this is not. If this were a foam wing, whenever I go over.
Oh, that I can solve for. That I solved all by myself.
Okay.
I solved it. You put the frisket paper down, and it'll jump around on the compound
Right,
curves
right.
in the covering. Put your Monocoat heat gun on the lowest of low heat.
Okay.
Go over it and smush it down with a rag.
Okay, you're
It'll
ahead of me then.
follow every single lump and bump and curve in the tissue.
You're ahead of me now. See, that I didn't know.
Okay.
That I didn't do.
That works with frisket. The only thing I've attempted a couple of times, just with one letter, to cut a single letter and then shrink the pattern and cut the inner piece so you get an outline letter. With no luck at all. I can't make...
Here's where you're ahead of the game. This is a relatively straight line.
Yes.
Okay, now let me explain to you why to me that's important. When I do this kind of lettering, see this Miss Ashley thing?
Right.
I can lay this out real
Right off
quick.
the trailing edge. Zip, zip, zip.
Right off the trailing, and then make one or two, like, just make it different.
Yeah.
Don't
right.
make them all, or they look like they came out of a typewriter.
Yeah.
In this case, I followed the leading edge, and then I made a box. I have a video. I'll give you the video how to do that. Or if you want me to do one, I can do it real quick.
Can
you? Oh, Jesus. It takes nothing.
All right.
But the couple of things that I would change, see, here's one thing I'd never like to see on a plane. Here's an example. The canopy is a color that appears nowhere else on the plane. That's always a key if you have a painted on canopy. What happens here, I would like to see this canopy a different color, blue. Or a color gray that this is almost like when you stand 100 feet away.
Yeah.
But that's real easy to do. That's minutes.
Or
that's nothing.
What I thought was mask this off and then with the finest of an airbrush line just run an almost black-gray rim around it. That's another way to cover it.
There's a lot of ways you can,
We can mess with that.
Yeah, that's real easy. But the lettering would be the big thing now. Now, I'm not used to using this material. You got, what is this, Coverite? Or what is?
Polyspan.
Polyspan.
It's polyester tissue.
See, this gives me concern.
Yes.
But when you put the clear on, if you put the clear, put 100 coats here.
Yeah.
100 coats here, and then just 2 coats here.
The
Bingo.
other thing is take that. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so Tom has given Karen a lesson in how to lay out masking tape here. Is he as good as he says he is?
Oh, absolutely. Look at that A. Look at that A.
Look at this man
Beautiful
go to work. I'm telling you, totally professional.
A. Unfortunately, he only does A's. That's it.
Yeah. The name of this plane is Alcoholics Anonymous. How long you been sober, Tom? Whoa,
10 minutes.
Yeah, 15, 20 minutes. That's amazing. I didn't know. We're going to name this plane the Alcoholic Special. That's unbelievable. Oh, my God. All right. It's coming. We're having a race. Tom's winning.
Yeah, we're having a race.
Okay, so honest and truly now, how long did that take to do the whole thing? Truth.
Got here
You were here at 7-ish? 7:30?
maybe quarter up, but we didn't get to work until, say, 7:15, because we're looking at pieces.
Less than 2 hours, anyway.
Oh, clearly.
Hour and a
To
quarter.
An hour and 3/4.
Okay, I could believe an hour and a quarter or something like that. All right, next time we see this, it's going to be all lettered up. It's going to be a new
Now,
guy ready to go. And you can decide now. There's a secret cockpit job. We don't know if Tom likes it yet or not. We're going to see if when he brings it back, we'll see if he likes it or not. Or if he scribbled over my name and said Windy Who. We'll find out real soon.
ooh.
I know, but I mean,
You got to grab it in by the fuselage. We were gonna run the motors today, but unfortunately,
you put all your big rings on with all
you put all your jewelry on.
your belt.
Get one of those collars.
The bracelet.
Yep. Make sure you have a lot of pens in your
With
pocket.
a chain.
See what kills you is when you have guys come over with pens in their pocket while they work.
Glasses.
Glasses, false teeth are falling out on the thing. You guys are so cruel.
Monocles too. Monocles.
Monocles. Joe, what do you think? The little cannons look nice? We're already looking at this hawk. We're trying to get Rich excited about building a hawk.
This is
The little cannons are going on here.
Now this is Miss Ashley.
There he is. We found your bird.
The same tail as you have in a
I know.
Stuka.
But what
Same,
I'm
the
saying
same.
is it's Miss Ashley's red.
Miss Ashley Red, yeah.
Hey, chickadoodle. Chickadooly.
Chicky.
Are you gonna flip start these
Multimatter.
with your...
Yeah, they'll flip right over.
This is nice.
They start
Okay,
right
now,
up.
Sequence, that's the engine that's your strongest inboard,
The stronger one is on the inside.
and that's the one you want to have a quarter-ounce extra squirt of fuel in?
No, we shut them off when we're done.
Oh, that's right, V-Tron.
Shut them off.
But you're
Yeah,
not-
none of that running out of gas with one engine
None of
running
this is
stuff.
gonna... What are you gonna do for your initial flights? You're just gonna...
Well, just open up Zetrons and leave them there. I don't want to play with the Zetron and be trying to do that in flight. Well, I'm trying to figure if the wing is level.
Well, wait a minute. Here's my question.
Go ahead.
Test first flight up. What if that engine quits first? What do you do?
Nothing bad will happen. It'll fly on one engine. I'll bet you any money.
But is it possible to have your V-Tron hooked up so that you can...
You can shut. They both shut off at the. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Just to kill them.
Yeah. Oh
It's a
sure.
kill switch
Sure.
versus...
Yeah, that'll work.
Now, how did you
Famous last words.
Align your rudders with the laser.
Yeah. By the way, you want to take the laser home with you?
Yeah, you gotta show
Give him
me.
the laser right there, Joe.
You gotta show me how to
We
work.
got to line up. Rich's Stuka has a flap that's out. So we're going to do, if you don't want to do it, I think you can figure it out, can't you? If not, bring the thing over here and I'll do it for you.
I have to play with this.
You got to get the wing in here. Okay? I'll only show it to you. I'll show this off camera. We've done this on camera enough. So I just want Joe's approval. I just want,
Absolutely.
all right.
Thumbs up.
I just want to know because,
On a
boy,
scale of 1 to 10, it's 11.
oh, well, I guess that means I got to buy the pizza today, huh?
What do you think, Joe?
Chicky, they're out for free pizza, I think.
On a scale of 1 to 10.
Watching this video and you're having a good time, let me pass on a great tip to you. And this happened to me this morning. Since we've lived in this house, which is about 10 years, I had never moved the washer and dryer away from the wall. And this morning, while I was doing some other stuff in the shop, we were preparing to do some gardening, I smelled something burning. And I went behind my dryer. It's all cleaned up now and mopped up. But what had happened behind this dryer, and of course this is a 100-year-old house, is balsa dust had accumulated up on the bricks and on the floor. The dust was 1/4 inch thick. Combined with the lint that normally comes out of a dryer, and I can't open up now, but the combination of this and balsa dust 1/4 inch thick, what happened? From the flame, the dryer kicked on, the open flame ignited it. This whole wall was on fire. We had the fire department here. I had several people. Well, we put the fire out first off. The dryer is shot. We're not going to ever use the dryer again. But and because think of this, it's by a gas line. If for some reason that gas line, the flames were to melt that thin copper gas line, I mean, I'm just envisioning that this could have been the end of my shop, my house, and most of all, my family and peeps. So I'm going to make a suggestion to everybody. If you never move your dryer, if you're a modeler like I am, and you can see, just to give you an idea, how close we are to where we do our modeling. Here's where we do most of the sanding. And keep in mind, I usually work off of this sanding bench, but even that's not enough. Even that's nonsense because it builds up to the point where, well, just think of the poor B-25 meeting his end because of a dryer fire. Now that means we've had 2 fires within 6 months, and I bought at one time 4 of these little fire extinguishers. I only have 2 left. Well, what I'm going to do this afternoon, first thing, we have some gardening to do, and then we're going to go to Home Depot. I'm going to buy more fire extinguishers. Because when you're in a now think of another thing. All the flammable material, thinner, dope. I mean, I'm looking around the shop here, and I'm thinking, I've just ducked a bullet. Anyway, the fire department had no idea that this was all flammable, of course, but we have ducked a bullet again twice in 6 months. I am definitely going to write something about this in Stunt News, but think of a combination of balsa dust and lint, and you've got a time bomb. If you don't move your dryer, maybe I'm going to put a piece of tape on the side of the dryer, and once a year, pull it away from the wall and vacuum it up. That is a time bomb waiting to happen. And imagine, I just think, of all crazy things, if you're going to crash a plane, or it's going to roll off the table or something. But imagine if you lost. It's staggering to think of what can happen with a fire. And I want to really thank Bill Hummel again, who encouraged me through his Stunt News article that I went out and bought the original fire extinguishers, which now, trust me, it won't be long before I'll have a fire extinguisher every 3 feet on a wall here. Anyway, we're going to go plant. That is a good tip. It's worth taking a minute out of enjoying the video to think about it too. Oh, it's planting day, and of course we have the usual suspects here planting away. Ingolf Stevenson comes all the way from Norway, flies in. He's an airline pilot.
I'm the chief supervisor.
And he's very smart. He wears good clothes. He comes here thinking, if I just wear good clothes, I won't have to plant anything.
I'm the chief supervisor for the planting.
But now my starstruck daughter headed for Broadway.
Don't even think about
Keep planting.
Mom, do something.
Mom, save me, save me, save me.
He does.
And we have a little visitor in our
This is not
pond.
very glamorous. Can we stop?
Come on, you're a movie star. What do you want? What do you want?
Did you ever hear about kids suing their parents?
Yeah. You're going to add to that list, huh? Listen, we want to see this house sparkle and shine by the end of the day.
You're gonna be sorry.
We're having House Beautiful over here to take a little picture of our house.
If you don't stop, I can't be responsible for what I do to the garden.
Ingolf, what should I do with her? Now in today's mail, and I look forward to getting anything from Owen Vick. He has sent me stuff in the past, pictures, this type of thing. He's a Reno Air Race buff, as I am. Made some nice comments about how he likes Tsunami and how he liked some of the other Reno Air Racers, and he sent in this copy, and these are full-size pictures, by the way. These are shop-quality pictures. They're not the kind that you wouldn't want to save. Anyway, he's asked some questions and some other ideas here, but the most important thing to me is that we have some more pictures to add to our little quest for every Reno Air Racer in the world. Now take a look at some of these. These are really nice. And their photo quality, you see, a lot of times when you send something in, it's a quality that's hard to, you don't really appreciate it unless it's on I guess it's on a photo quality paper, I don't know. But this is a Sea Fury critical mass, and believe me, if we were going to do a Sea Fury, this might be one we'd really consider. It has the bent wing, as all Sea Furies do. The modern cockpit, the Reno Air Race. We've got him on some of the videos, too, some of the older videos. A lot of them are out on loan right now, but I remember seeing this on several videos. Apparently he's living in an area of Orangevale, California, where you can get to see this. Now this is funny. The 4-stroke seminar. Oh, and I gotta tell you, that's pretty cool. I gotta send Owen out some videos, but I'm trying to think of something we could publish this in Stunt News with an appropriate caption, where we have all this jousting back and forth about 4 strokes and 2 strokes and 3 strokes and everything. Instead of worrying about who's having the most fun, we worry about nonsense that doesn't even matter. Hey, again, my feeling. You like 4 strokes? You like half A's? I like them all. The heck with it. Buy one of. I like this whole deal here. I like to get this guy in my possession. But anyway, Owen, I'm going to shoot you out some video. I hope you enjoy it. It will be. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Hey, how can you not like windy videos? Even I like them. Now we got our box from Dub Jet today, just in the nick of time after this cleanup from this fire. What a mess. That powder from the fire extinguishers is supposed to be not good to breathe, like everything in this house is not good to breathe. So I was real meticulous. I went around, took each plane down, cleaned it, took all the little things. But the garden's coming along great. We got another day of gardening. This is from Dub. And this is what we've been waiting for our... And we only have 4 more days that we'll be able to use the field at Palisade Park. And then we go to the grass field where tests are, it's a lot more difficult to do the testing. But this is the box, the carbon box that I made. We're going to make what amounts to be a test tank. And he sent me, and he made these. I don't know if he made them or Dennis made them. The bladders that go in the tank. And they need to be installed. Oh, he made them out of phenolic. Okay. Anyway, if you can envision what this, when this is all assembled, and I obviously haven't assembled it yet, what this is going to look like. If this is going to get mounted in one of the carbon back plates, and that's what we're going to have to figure out how to do today. And let's see what the back of, okay, the back of this is, I guess we're going to figure this out the hard way or the easy way. Since this is not a leak, it doesn't matter if this is not an airtight box now. Now I need to figure out, in fact I ought to call Dub and find out what he wants to do with this in terms of how we're going to work on this. Anyway, this is our next little project and we're going to work on this. I'm going to give him a call, see what if anything I should be doing. Maybe I should be mounting it to the other side. Anyway, I'll get some feedback from Dub. I'm going to work on that. I also have a pipe. Now, I know they sell these commercially. Rich Jacobone bought one of these, and we want to test it. Needless to say, it's a baffle stunt pipe. I need to get the name and address of who's manufacturing them. I saw them selling these at the Nats, and it's a really nicely made piece of equipment. I just want to test it. Even though I make pipes, I always like to keep up with the competition. So what the plan is once we get a call from Dub and we get figured out exactly what we're going to do here, the next part of this is going to be to make up a stunt tank and get it in Strega, and hopefully those 3 or 4 days we have left, get some test flights. We need a day to bench run the motors on a B-25. It doesn't look like that day's coming because I need more than one person to do it, or I have to do it with a stooge, and then if the weather warms up, it's really cold out there. If the weather warms up, maybe this afternoon I'll even try to do that using the stooge, even though I hate to do that. With a twin-engine plane, there's going to be a lot of batteries going on and off. I just hate having that. But anyway, this is the next thing. We're going to have to do a little test on this. And if this works, to me, this would be the biggest single advancement in stunt in my lifetime. Because the biggest problem you always have is air bubbles in the fuel. And you wind up having to build nose sections and deal with resonance and, crazy trying to eliminate air bubbles. If this works the way we anticipate it will eliminate air bubbles. We've already done the test on a profile. Problem is getting it into a tank that fits into most planes is a problem. Well, again, we're going to find out. And by the way, this tank, with all the hardware and everything, is still lighter than a metal tank. So you could have the best of both worlds. You could have a tank that's lighter than a typical tank, and at the same time that it's lighter, you also have the benefit of never having an air bubble. Now, the last little obstacle to deal with is the fueling of the plane, and I want to figure out a way that's going to be convenient to do that, because ultimately, if this works as well as I suspect, this is going to wind up in Miss Ashley, which is our #1 competition plane. And the next thing would be, of course, once that works, we'll go backwards and retrofit all of the planes, the Typhoon, right down to the Spitfires with the latest of these variations. But I think this is really going to work well. Again, I'm not going to know until I actually put one of these together. I'm excited about it. I can't wait to call Dubs. Anyway. I spoke to Dennis down at Jet Engineering, and he said this is ready to go, just use an ordinary epoxy on it. Now, there's a couple of little things I have to deal with. First off, I'm not sure if you can see inside, but when we make the tanks, and this one was one of the ones that's just parts of a tank, it's done with micro balloons. Now, the problem with doing it with micro balloons is inside, now it wouldn't matter on an ordinary tank, but inside there's just some little rough areas. So what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to look at the possibility of using some other parts here, or I'm not sure yet. I need to deal with the fact, or I have to figure out a way of getting in there with some kind of a grinding sanding tool so there are no rough edges. Because the bag, and it's a very special bag that they have that's made out of, and it's confined up here, I sure don't want to have the bag rub up on a sharp spot and right away within some very short time make a leak. But this is really a custom one-of-a-kind, well, it's a two-of-a-kind thing now. So I don't want to butcher one up. I want to think about exactly how I want to do this. That's step one. And I'm hoping ultimately these will be available commercially, but right now we're still in the experimental stage. But this really does have the potential to revolutionize the way planes are built, the way engines run. It really has the potential. Whether we're ever going to squeeze that out of it remains to be seen. The way that's worked the best so far, and I've tried 3 or 4 different ways of doing this, is to take a piece of sandpaper. This is a sticky back paper on a piece of 1/2-inch elevator stock. This seems like it wouldn't be such a good way to do it, but it's difficult to get in there and clean that joint up. Now when I do the other joint, I don't need to use EPON, of course. I can use 5-minute epoxy or anything, because we're not holding anything together other than just holding the box together. Now this way worked good the first time I tried it. I don't need to make it a polished surface. I just need to get rid of any little razor edge in there. It's going to be in my way. Again, like with any of these tanks, it's all hand labor. It's at this point in time a labor of love, I'm imagining. You can see the little stuff that's, oh yeah, we've got it clean now. Not sure if you can really see that. Now I'm going to flush that all out nice and clean with M600. Next challenge is we want to get a feeling for what size hole this is. Of course I could mic it if I wasn't so lazy to walk over and get the micrometer. I want to make it just undersize in it because I want it to be a tight fit. There we go. It's a 7/8 hole. Now you can't drill, needless to say you can't drill. What I originally wanted to do, I wanted to put this off to one side so it could kind of snake the tubing, but I'm not going to have that choice right now because the way I look at the bag, I don't know if the bag can expand equally in all dimensions. So for the first one, I'm going to make it just almost in the middle and live with the fact I might lose a little bit of the tank. The jet that I'm using now, the low time one, only uses about 5 ounces of fuel anyway, so if I have a 5 3/4 ounce tank, it's not going to be a problem. So I need to get a 7/8 hole, and I can do that with a Dremel bit real carefully. And now usually a Dremel bit, a very tiny one, I can get right up almost to the line and then get the line off by hand so that I have a nice tight fit. Time you're dealing with carbon fiber, it's hard to drill a hole in it. First off, you only get about 2 holes and then the drill is gone. But to drill a hole this big, you'd never be able to drill it with a drill, not that I know of any tricky way to do it. The best way is do it undersized with a burr, and then open it up very gradually by hand. If we can get these tanks working the way I envision they will, especially for 4 strokes, they'll work for anything, but 4 strokes where you need that at the end of the flight, it always wants to shut off when it sees an air bubble. This will solve that problem once and for all. Now the last little bit we can get done by hand. I've been doing the last little bit. Remember, anytime you join pre-cured epoxy, any kind of resin thing, you need to sand both surfaces, so we're going to have to sand around this. I'm not sure about the phenolic, but Dennis felt the epoxy would be the way to go here. And I'd like to get, of course, a relative. Boy, he did a precision job. It just fits in there. Again, we wouldn't have to do this if we were building a plane from scratch. It's just going to be a press fit now. Need one more swipe of the sandpaper here. If we weren't using a plane that was already built, we could just build a plane for a standard jet tank. Boy, that would be very convenient. Then you could buy them off the shelf. So if anybody out there wants to do some co-testing, and you haven't built a plane yet, that'd be worth trying. Or just make the box big enough. If you really want to be cute, you can make the box big enough. You can put the tank, a 4-stroke tank with a 5/8 mount, and a jet tank all at the same time. Now that would be smart for next year. I'll try to come up. There we go. Now, obviously, it goes in with the bag inside the tank, but that's our press fit. That's what we're looking for. Now I need to roughen this up all around the edge with 80 grit so that I get a good bond to the epoxy. Again, you can use the little piece of sticky back paper that's left over. Anytime you're sanding carbon, of course, good to wear a mask. I can't wear a mask while I'm shooting video, but you can, unless you're shooting video too. So we'll be able, once this is fit into the plane, while this front is drying, I'm going to go get the test plane Strega, pull it all apart, because before I glue the back on the tank, I need to be able to see how far back in this will go. If I need to trim a 1/4 inch off, so that lip, the part that's going to stick out the front. See, if I have the lip all the way in the tank, the bag is going to go up around here. I have to allow for the fact that lip is going to take up a little bit of the room. But again, if you're building a plane from scratch and you know you need 6 ounces of fuel, 5.5, whatever, you can then interpolate that. Or in our case, if we really wanted to, we just cut a hole in a bulkhead in the back. I'm not opposed to doing that either. Okay, that's ready to fit. Now I'm going to clean this all up with M600. I need to drill a hole up in this corner, or any corner. It just allows air to escape while the bag is expanding. It's a vent hole, allowing me to even get my finger deeper inside and get some of the little rough edges as smooth as possible. Again, when people see one of these carbon tanks, they think there's no labor involved. Believe me, it's even just making a typical traditional carbon tank, it's a lot of labor, a lot of sanding dust. Okay, we're ready to glue the front piece in. It's just going to be ordinary 5-minute epoxy, nothing special about it. But what it's going to allow me to do is, while this piece, without gluing the back piece on, and there'll be no micro balloons in there, so that should be a smooth joint. I'll make sure. And again, I don't need to make it like it's going to contain fuel. The bag, the bladder, whatever you want to call it, that contains all the fuel. And in case anybody's wondering what I might have had for a snack, take a wild guess. Anyway, guess what Chicky had for a snack? Oh my God. Okay. Now with this piece off of here, I don't want to get any epoxy on the bag. I want to have it sitting just like this. Again, if this joint isn't strong enough, I could wrap a little carbon toe around it. Just trying to envision what could be the problem here. I don't think this will be a problem at all. Now, if we needed more strength, again, I could make a lip. I could make a mold with a little lip on this piece. If we're going to make these in production, that wouldn't be difficult at all. But first we want to do the development, because the part of it that I don't know is it going to be to our advantage to have this piece off the side, or maybe it won't matter at all. A lot of times you make yourself crazy trying to come up with something that you don't even need it. It'll work fine. I have a feeling, I mean, if the plane would just fit the typical tank, you wouldn't even need to do this. But to do this, you need the big fueler. Don't even think about doing this with a SIG fueler. It's the filling and the getting all the air out that's the part that eluded me for a couple of years. Now hopefully I'm on track. Okay, we're going to just let that dry. While that's drying, I'm going to strip the plane, the motor, gut Mr. Strega and get him ready for our next test session. Now because time is so limited. See, normally what I would be doing, I would be taking all this hardware out and just put the tank in. Then the next session, I would change the pipe. Normally I don't like to do 2 or 3 things at the same time. And by the way, a good trick, if you're going to take one pipe off the plane and put another one on, there's a great way to do it. If you do it right at the field and you take one brand of pipe off and put another brand on, you can usually tell by if the needle goes in or if the needle goes out what the flow rate of that pipe is going to be. Just a rough number. If you put a different brand of pipe on a plane, all of a sudden the needle has to go in 2 turns, you know that's a very restrictive needle, a very restrictive pipe. If you put a different brand of pipe or a different pipe setting and you have to open the needle to get back your motor run, you know it's flowing a lot better, and it would probably, good chance, it's going to make more power. In this case, we're going to try to do both experiments on the same day because, like I said, we only have the 4 days left at the paved field. And if we don't make it, we have other things to do. If we don't make it in the next 4 days, well, then we can't get back to that paved field until after Labor Day. So that's going to kind of be a kink, but we're going to work around it. Another thing, why I like to do all my testing in an older plane, this plane is heavier and draggier. So when I get things working in this plane just the way I want them, usually I can take them right out of here and put them right in what amounts to be the number 1 plane. Few ounces lighter, less drag. So I have a good, it's like a guy swinging 2 bats or 3 bats before he comes up to bat. Things that work in this plane and work at that grass field, the circle burner field, when you go anywhere else in the world, they always work a lot better. So first thing I need to do is pull this all apart, and that's just a matter of screws and unscrewing things. And then we'll start retrofitting in all new hardware. The day when I was at the field, Brian Manow was there, and he told me to put this on the video, and it's really a good tip. This is the way I normally leave my flight box. You can see I have a problem, the same problem Brian had, in the fact that the top battery terminals are exposed, and they're exposed so I can get alligator clips on them to recharge the starter battery when I'm running 4 strokes. Well, what happened with Brian is something in his toolbox, and I think it was a can of spray ether, because he's a car mechanic, remember, shorted out the 2 terminals, and he heard while he was driving down the road some hissing and smoking, and imagine after this dryer fire, I'm very aware of this. And so what happened is, he stopped the car, got out, took the can off, but by that time the battery had expanded to 5 times its normal size. It's a gel cell. When I told him to save the battery so I could show what they look like, the battery's destroyed, of course, but not only that, I'd be willing to bet, and I don't know for sure, somebody that knows about electronics, I'll bet you if you leave this shorted out long enough, you could blow the battery up. So to take care of that possibility, what I'm going to do is put some duct tape on my terminals right now before I forget about it. In the toolbox all the time, but now imagine if an Allen wrench or something comes by and shorts that out. Well, you know, I never thought of that, but that's a real possibility. So what I really should have done when I made the toolbox is make a lid for this, so you could just open the lid and get in at the terminals. That'd be safe. But for right now, duct tape will cover that. That's a real good safety tip, by the way, but that's a real thing that can happen. As I get older, boy, I get more and more conscious of safety. Right now, at this point in my life, to do something that I could avoid. I mean, it's bad enough in life the things you can't avoid, you know. You can't avoid getting old. You can't avoid having your taxes go up every year if you live in New Jersey. There's things you just can't avoid, but I think putting a piece of duct tape on this is really cheap insurance. In fact, I'm going to put 2 layers on just in case. In case there's some sharp tool or something that comes along. So I try to, again, the deal is to try to learn from other people's mistakes before you burn the house down or before Wendy burns the house down. And that is really cheap insurance. Now, I normally lay the tachometer up there, but the tachometer's plastic. Anyway, hope that little tip saves somebody a little. And boy, vacuum behind your dryer. Vacuum in the bird cage. Hey, Molto Mario, you getting your feathers back? Look at this, look at this. Molto! I wonder I never get anything done. Well, we're going to try to fit up this test plane now. That's been an absolute total success. The Medusa props, and this is a 12.6 that's de-pitched. I have a gauge that I've de-pitched it on. If anybody buys one of these and will like it de-pitched for a jet, I'll be glad to do it for them for a for a pizza pie probably. Some nominal charge, I don't know, I'm not sure. It takes less than an hour to do it really right. They come balanced, so you don't even have to deal with the fact that, like some props when you buy them, it's the first 3 hours you spent balancing them, so that's kind of annoying. But anyway, these come balanced. But this is what I do. I knurl the hubs, knurl them real good, knurl the back of, in this case we're using a nose weight to do our testing. Knurl the back of, if you're going to use one of Randy's spinners, any spinner, knurl the back. Knurl everything. In this case we need a little spacer. Knurl the spacer. Knurl, 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 knurl. Sounds like I'm selling knurling tools. Now this is the low time motor. This one has really been a jewel so far. And we'll see if we can push it to the next level now. Tips things I always do. I always tighten header screws. I take some 4-0 steel wool, and there's always a little bit from priming the plane. There's always a couple little dots on here, little things that can be annoying. And the reason I like to clean it is because then if a gasket starts to leak, I know it's starting to leak. Where if you left it all black and greasy, you'd never know that the leak is getting worse and worse and worse. And because we're trying to do some testing for Dub as to whether the low time motor is going to be better, the same, or worse than the original one, well, I'd like to know if these are going to be problems. 4-0 steel wool cleans spinners real nicely too. I always take a little M600, clean off the parts, look around. You can usually tell right away if a head gasket's leaking. There'll be the amounts of burned fuel around the edge. This one's pretty tight at the front still. We don't have any real severe leakage there, any more than a drop or so. Now another thing, I noticed a couple of things about, we're talking about knurling. This pipe, if you get any pipe, it doesn't matter. They didn't mark the baffle, so I measured it off with a stick and put a little detent on there, and I'll stick some paint or something in there so I know where the baffle mark is. Otherwise, it's impossible to set where the pipe's going to be. And if I want to fine-tune that a little bit, also in the front of the pipe, there's no knurls at all. Now, what would happen if and there's no pressure fitting, but we don't care because you can't run a bladder tank on pressure, so that's another idiosyncrasy. Here's what happens. No matter how tight you make the clamp, if there aren't any knurls, it's going to do that in flight. And it's going to do that at the most inconvenient time. So all of my pipes, knurl city. And that'll be the next thing we do is get some knurls up on here. Get this rough, and also the back of the header with the engraving tool, with a Dremel tool, or with 80 grit paper, this way so you have threads. But always some knurls in there. That's knurled up there. Now you know when you do put that in a coupler, even a slight bit of pressure will hold that really nice. In fact, sometimes it's hard to get out. Oh! But that is one of the real must-dos of tuned pipes. You also need a line to tell you where the baffle is. You could stick a tube in here, hold it with your finger there and measure it. And I like to put a little, I have some high-temperature header paint that I can paint a little line on there if I want to. That's what I've done to the pipes that I sell, just so, see, that doesn't come off in time. These are nicely made. They're beautifully made. They're nice and light. You could trim this off. Of course, I don't want to trim it because it belongs to Rich until I see if it doesn't fit in a plane. We'll find out. And then we can just, and we don't have a pressure fitting, but again, we're not going to be using pressure, so not a big deal. Matter of testing, and this is why I test things. This tank has a leak. When I took this out, the first tip off is the shims were all wet, but there's a slight leak in here somewhere. Now to find that leak, I cap off both of these. Can grab a little, see if we can, a little bit of window. Oh, you could just fill up the sink with water. I guess we're going to have to do. I'm going to have to fill up the sink, put a long piece of tubing on and find out exactly where it's leaking. A lot of times it's by the seam. This tank is modified here, but the problem is now, with a metal tank too, every time you touch a soldering iron to this inside the tank, you're loosening up stuff, then you got to clean the filter a bunch of times. Well, I'm not saying like it's a big deal, but it's one of the things I hope the bladder will eliminate, because there's no junk in the bladder. There shouldn't be anyway. But we'll find out. With a tank that leaks is a lot of times, if you're running pipe pressure, get some of these suds out of here. My wife was doing laundry in here. Since we don't have a dryer, I guess it won't matter. But it's real easy to spot where the leak is. The vent is cracked right around the edge of the vent, so that's the uniflow vent. It's a very common place right in here where it's cracked. I'll resolder. I'll put a washer around this and resolder it, just so, because I want to keep this as a backup tank. But never hurts to test. Now, another trick, if you have a metal tank you're using and you're going to put it in storage, fill it with fuel, cap it off, put it in a plastic bag. And when you go to use it, it won't be all full of Glock. And I love that word, Glock. What happens if you leave air in here, the air and the castor oil, it all turns to gum and chewing gum and pencil erasers and alligator snot and everything. And then when you go to run a tank, you take it out. Remember Ted had a problem at the team trials, or at the Nats, I forget, he had a tank that was leaking. Oh, when you got to solder it and then clean the filter, clean. Also, I'm going to take all the tank shims that go with this tank, tape them right in place so that there's no way if I have to use this tank, this will be my spare tank. I don't want to have to go back and reshim the tank and figure out the shim, go through that whole nonsense again. It should all be done once and then saved forever, like a computer file. I started this again. 4-0 steel wool to the rescue here. And one of the things I like about if the jet tanks work in this form or in some future form, not having vents in a plane. Will not need the vents, which are never scale and can be, in this case, well, now that it's clean, I can see the crack instantly. Right there up on where the tube meets the shell. What I did, I soldered a washer. But the problem is now that I've hit this with the solder iron, I'm sure there's going to be junk in the tank. I'm going to flush it, of course. I'm going to go pressure test it. Then I'm going to flush it. And then the last thing is I'll fill it with fuel and keep this as my spare tank. But it's a good idea to you can pressure check it inside the plane too, by plugging off the vents and just trying to hold a vacuum on it or blowing on it and seeing if it's a real obvious leak. This wasn't obvious, but it was enough that the whole inside of the plane is soaking wet. Where I put fuel in it, I want to double check that it's, again, the water doesn't lie. And you can also do that with a SIG fueler. Now we're back to having a leak-free tank. Now the next thing is, because I've soldered up by these vents, and I'm sure there's going to be some junk in here. First thing I want to do is knurl these vents with some 80 grit sandpaper, like put threads on them. Because otherwise what happens is the tubing tends to slide off. It's very slippery when they're not knurled. And then I'll do the rest of it off camera. I'll fill about half full of fuel, cap it all off and put it in a plastic bag with the shims taped in place, and that is a spare part, a support part for any of the jet powered planes. Now you'd be amazed how just putting a little 80 grit and also getting the ends, and this tank, since it's used, they've already been radius nice. Almost every person that I've ever seen had a tubing split. It splits right at the end there from that kind of an action. So what we're looking for here is, hopefully dead reliable performance. We don't want the tubing slipping off. We don't want to have any myriad of problems that can happen. The next thing is to fill a tank with fuel, flush it out. Because when you see people that have dead consistent motor runs, you think, oh boy, are they lucky. No, they're usually not lucky at all. They just do this stuff. They just do the test and all the little things that result in a good motor run, and certainly tank maintenance is one of them. And usually you let a tank, at least around here in my cellar, sit over the winter. Well, there's almost guaranteed if it didn't have fuel in it, it's going to be a problem. There'll be rust, there'll be corrosion, there'll be something happening to it. Tanks have a shelf life. Tanks are not, you don't have the same tank as when you were a 5-year-old kid. It just doesn't happen. Now what I want to do is I want to see how much stuff comes out of here anyway in the course of filling it a few times. And because the sink is white, I can see little specks come out. It seems that, and these are all the things you can do at the shop, and when you get to the field, you don't have to deal with, oh gee, my tank leaks. Now it's a beautiful flying day, the best day of the year. You want to fly the plane, everybody's there, or you're at a contest and you're competing, or something's happening, and then you're sitting there with the plane on its back with rags and screws and wrenches, and I would always rather do it in the shop. And when you get a tank that runs perfectly, it runs well, it's shimmed well, you've got a lot of hours into getting that before it's right. And then to jeopardize that because some lack of maintenance, I can still see little specks coming out of here. Even with my naked eye, I don't even have to look. Even so, we'll run a filter on this with the first gallon or so of fuel until the rest of it loosens up. Now there's still fuel in the tank. I'd say 3/4, half. You don't want it full right to the top either, because then you relieve no room for air expansion. Now I'm just going to cap it off. I'll go get a cap for the overflow. But while this is in storage, it'll always have fuel in it. Other thing, when you cap it off, it's a good idea if you have a little bit of fuel or oil on a rig, let it have a coating of oil on it. Let a coating of something so it doesn't corrode on the outside either, just for appearance sake. Just so it's easier to slide in and out. And having a reliable tank that's pre-run, pre-shimmed, ready to go, this really changes everything. It makes you a serious competitor instead of somebody you're just tying up the flying circle or the pad that you lay the plane on. Here it is in a sealed bag with fuel. It's capped off. It's got the shims, and I've made a notation that I got with a micrometer, the amount of shims that go between the mounts in the tank, so that when and if I want to use this as a spare tank, I know exactly what I have. I have the exact shims, in fact, and it just makes it that it's more that you're ready to do it on the first flight or in between flights or whenever you decide you need that spare tank. A tank is not an inconsequential part of setting up a plane. A lot of people think, oh, my motor run, and they're worrying. They don't realize the tank is a major part of making that happen. All right, now what we got to do, we have to go in here. I have to make another shim up 170 thousandths. And then I want to slide in the new tank and see what kind of clearance I have. Do I have clearance behind the motor? Not going to need the vents anymore. The vents are toast. Boy, how many planes I'd less Spitfires and Type. I'd love to eliminate that. And I need to figure out how we're going to fuel a plane by having a fuel line. Somewhere here we have to be able to access the fuel line to fill the tank. Just make sure when this tank is in, first off, that I have the same shim and that I can get the tubing. Now this tubing really resists being pinched, but I don't want to have it, if possible, rubbing up on the header or any part of the motor. I need to take that into account when I make the length of the tank. Worried about interference here, but looks like we don't. It looks like so far we don't have any. Looks like we're going to really luck out on this. And don't you think it's about time? Now, let's be honest. Don't you think it's time Wendy caught a break here of some kind? Some kind of chickadoodle break? Oh, Chicky, get off my shoulder. Anyway, we're going to glue this piece on, let it dry, put the whole plane back together with the other pipe on, and we're going to try to get outside, even though the wind is howling out there. We have, you don't see it on a video, but we have just had from the worst weather any spring. We've had a couple of nice days, but in between it's just been, it's been so bad that I don't even think about going to the field. Like I don't even think, oh, I'll go down and see how the field is. Years ago it was marginal and you could go and see, but no more. Out of the question, it's just so bad. Now since we don't have to have a leak-free fit, and I don't want to have too much of this dripping inside, but I will. Let's try to. No micro balloons because I don't want to have any little lumps or bumps. And what I'll do to ensure that, somebody's at the door. Demet shows up right while we're on video here, doing secret stuff, secret Dubjet stuff. But as a Dubjet, as an owner of a jet, I guess he's allowed to. You got to buy a jet before they let you look at this stuff. Anyway, and we're just going to let that dry with the tank in this mode so that we won't have a run. If we put it this way, some of it may run inside the tank. So I'm going to make sure that's good and dry before I go to the next step. It looks like we have lucked out to some degree in the fact that this now can go right around the motor. The shim, relatively nice tight fit. Now it'll just be a question of putting the rest of the hardware back in here and getting another run on this and see where we stand. Practice filling and unfilling it 4 or 5 times. Now these vents are just totally unfunctional. You know what's going to happen, Les? The first guy's going to come along. Somebody's going to fuel the plane up.
Yep.
Oh. And what we're going to do is split this line. We're going to go outside and practice after lunch, see if we can defuel and fuel this tank, and then somehow we'll be, even though Les seems to have, I'm committing him to this. He has a better way of, we're gonna find out. I don't know what he's got.
Maybe we can do something as efficient and a little neater.
Well, I'm open for suggestions. We'll see we'll see where that's going. Okay, this is from Ken Claps, and this is from Elliot Scott's really nice plans of the Cardinal Evolution. He's got a carbon fiber tank, needless to say, old Brodak finish. Ken says it's Scott. Thunder Tiger 46. It looks like it's got one of those Mac tuned mufflers. That looks pretty cool on there. We saw somebody up at the field had it on an air coupe model. I can't remember who. But anyway, really kind of cool. We always like hearing from Ken because he's always got something cool going on. He's always got something unusual, different. Nice cowling treatment there. That's really nice. I see he's got the Windy carbon fiber tank, carbon fiber gear. Always a good choice, Ken. Always a good choice. And nice finish. A nice paintwork. I like the paint job, Ken. That's really nice. We'll pick a couple of these and get them out to Stunt News. Hard to pick. They're all nice. Usually when I take pictures, there's only one good one out of the whole roll. So just buffed it out. Just buffed it out. His little key name for this Thunder Cardinal, and because it's a Thunder Tiger engine. And he says the weight of the muffler is heavy, but having a carbon fiber tank makes up for it. Flight weight is 2,953 grams. Now, if I knew anything, I would have no idea how to convert that except divide it. Anyway, he had a special way of buffing out Brodak dope that he wanted to share with us. And he's been having a great time buffing out his Brodak dope up there freezing, keeping Chris Cox freezing. Anyway, Ken, we appreciate it. We hope tomorrow or today or whenever, somewhere soon, if we ever stops raining, we can get that jet run, do a little test run and practice fueling it. And I know Ken also has a jet, also has several other things, and he's building a Tsunami 40 from, guess what, Elliot Scott Plans. Anyway, great. Ken, I appreciate it a whole lot. Well, we got a little break in the weather here. They were predicting rain. We had a few drops of rain, and now it's not raining at all. So, as I thought we might even get the get Strager run today, but I see it's getting warm. It's getting nice. I hope we're going to get a flight, or maybe even get this B-25 run pretty soon. Anyway, first priority though is get this tank tested. So Wes, the deal is, well, we don't know how much the fuel we're going to use, but the first thing, with it sitting in this position, is to pull out all the air out of the bag, and you'll see the last of the air bubbles will start coming out. And then that's telling me that the bag is, see the last of the air coming out?
Mm-hmm.
Once that comes up into the fueler, well, again, this is the first time we're doing it, so maybe we got to collapse the bag a few times. We'll find out. See the rest coming out? Now see, this is what you can't do if you don't have the big fueler. Now what I do, I just wait. Maybe you don't even have to do this part. Get the last of the air out of there.
You still got some down here, Woody.
Yeah, just... Now Les is going to try to come up with some kind of cute little fueling. What would you call it?
Oh, I don't know, any one of the commercial, they have fuel dots and special fueling fixtures for the RC aircraft.
Now what I did the first time, and it worked, is I let some of the fuel back into the tank. Again, I'm not putting it under pressure yet. You can clearly feel when it fills with pressure.
Well, the bladder reaches the limits of the...
Yeah, now what I want to do is I want to pull out, that just put some fuel in it, maybe it'll fill in the crevices so we get all
See
the
if
air
there's
out.
any more air.
Right, and maybe you have to do this 2 or 3 times, I'm not sure, on a new tank. Again, this is where Dub and Dennis have the little trick. See, now what's coming out is little tiny
foam.
bubbles.
Yeah, almost looks like foam.
Yeah, see the last little nothings.
Okay.
Okay, so that's going in the right direction now. Now we've got, I can see nothing there. And I mean nothing.
That's clear.
Okay, so now we're going to fill up. I just saw some air go back in there. See, I might not be pulling on this hard enough. The idea is to show the people watching the video that this is not like a set it, and you got to get a little technique. It's like setting a needle valve or something. Because I can picture other people having these and getting frustrated. But once you get the technique, the second, third, see now all the air bubbles are going up there, look at that. So once you do this, I'm going to guess 5 times. I did it on the profile the day we flew it all day. By the end of the day I was doing this and talking to people, but now because this is new, I want to get every drop of air out. Because I mean it runs so steady right to the end that it's scary. Okay, now I'm going to I saw 1 air bubble go back in, but we'll run it once, just let it run out a tank of fuel. It's got 1 air bubble in the whole tank. And I think after you fill it and unfill it and everything 4 or 5 times. All right. Okay, now, feel it. Just feel it. You can feel what that feels like when it's... Oh, wait, don't force it. It's down. But now you're under pressure, a certain amount. Now when I let it go, you can see some of it comes right out.
Okay, well, okay.
But what I'm going to try to do is, we know that's under pressure. See, just let that pressure come out. Now I know I've overpressurized it. Okay. Now you got to put hemostats on it. Now it'll, that first time, that had too much pressure in it now.
Well, what we were doing is we were thumping that around the bottom.
Yeah, that's the way you're going to know. Okay. So that's our first initial. I didn't want to make it a fake thing where everything goes right. That's the first time we've filled that tank. bubble here. What lesson I figured out, we learned. We ran it, what, twice already?
That was the second run.
The first time we had air bubbles in it, and it was that I didn't fuel it correctly. The second time, I very carefully held pressure on it for, what, a minute? Not even, around a minute, letting all the air, little by little, the air, and when that was done...
Don't forget, that was the first time that
yeah, right,
fueled
right.
it.
Now, we're going to do it, well, I'm going to do it one more time.
Let's see what we get.
Because I think each time you do it, the corners or the edges where the air is in the bag fill with fuel and you get a better... the last one was perfect, so I don't know how much better it's going to get. Now, what we don't know is how the motor's going to run in maneuvers, but this part of it, as far as getting it to run, and I challenge anybody that's got a stunt ship, any motor, anything you want, go hold your plane upside down, run the motor, and look at the airline. I bet you in the course of 7 minutes or 6 minutes, you'll see air bubbles, and the motor will be that's what kills motor runs. You'll be coming out of the wing over. When an air bubble hits, if you're in the middle of a maneuver, you're dead. Now, this should be, when this is dialed in, this should be such a monumental improvement over what we have. You can't use it without the jet fuel, or don't even think, if you buy a tank from Dub, buy the fuel. And if you're building a plane, you can build a tank right into the plane. So you're still building.
Yep.
You could just build a hole, get the middle of the tank, the middle of the motor. But I think
we're not even sure that that's necessary.
Well, we don't know yet. Well, we're going to find out if it's flyable tomorrow. But in between the raindrops, we'll be thinking, and I'm sure you're thinking, I'm positive, Windy will never get it in the van. Well, let me tell you something. Up until about 15 minutes ago, this plane had never, ever been out of the cellar except for one short trip through the door. Now, picture where this plane has to go every time you want to fly it. It's got to go through this little alleyway. It fits out this door by about... Now, I know Dave Downey is going to be impressed with this because he originally wanted to make this a 900-inch plane. We decided on 800 because I didn't think it would go outside the house. Well, Les was here, he took the rulers, and he spent about an hour measuring everything and said, there's no way it's going in the van. And he's amazed, he's impressed beyond words. It fits right in there. Oh my God, it's going to Brodex.
There's room for a second airplane.
We got the poles, you can put a second plane in there.
There's room for tools, there's room for everything. I never thought it'd fit in there like that.
Wow, I am amazed. Now, had we made the 900-inch version, I'd be making a carrier rack now. The only thing, I got to take the cannon off the front to get it in. What a real letdown that's going to be. All right, we are, I guess you would call this, we're in Fat City. I don't know. It's really a pain getting it in and out, but it fits. We can probably get 2 planes in here, and that changes everything. Because obviously we don't want to go playing bumper cars with this thing. This is our Sunday only Ducati. I guess that's a good way to look at it. Now, what I'm thinking, we ought to get some foam anywhere where it can hit a rudder and just...
We should have a protect...
a bed pad.
A sock that goes on the wing up to about here.
Yeah, a bed pad.
And then just somehow lock it in so that rudder won't hit the side.
Some kind of a bed pad would be real. I don't know if Karen's got... Well, they will take the one off the bed. I guess that'll work. Taking up all kind of foam pads and things. Believe it or not, that thing fits right in there. But what I wanted to have is these little chocks that I have that hold the wheel. I wanted to put 80 grit sandpaper on one side, except they won't stick to these the way I want them to. So I'm going to use some of the spray adhesive from a foam wing, which is what I've already done on this one. And then it really sticks. When you put that on a rug, that can't move at all. Very, very little anyway. So that's another little piece, and then we're going to go get some foam. The original bed pad we used here, we're going to chop it up and put it in various places and hold it in with Velcro. So you wouldn't think this becomes that big of a deal, but even just a little thing like this can just absorb Oh, he's back already. How many hours you got on it? Holy mackerlandy.
Well, I need some magic marker here.
Well, this was the sum total of a day's work, making all these Velcro pads. They're installed with Velcro. You need a hole to get at the door locks. Velcro pads for the rudder. Yeah, boy, I really am. This, Les, you're the man, I'll tell you. I don't care what Brodak says about you.
No, this is a matter of sheer unadulterated luck, is what you got here.
This is luck. This is what you call like when a tree falls and you're in between the two branches.
That's right.
Now we got to make lines up. He has this great invention. He's going to use 100-foot electrical cables. Show him what we're going to fly it on. Show him the flying lines. There's the old dryer out here, by the way. Oh yeah.
And this is solid too.
These are solid lines.
Upgraded.
Solid O zeros. Well, tomorrow, tomorrow, tomorrow. Everything is tomorrow, mañana, whatever.
I like that.
We'll see. Today we're here at the field early to try to help Rich resolve a problem that he has with his Stuka. He had to cut the horn out of the back of the flaps. Hard to explain here what he's had a problem with. When the plane was lined up level in neutral, the flaps were down slightly. So what would happen in level flight, it would want to climb, and in inverted flight, it would want to dive. So what we tried to do, and I don't know if this is going to be, well, Rich actually did it, I didn't have anything to do with it, is cut the horn out and move the flaps and then re-glue the horn in. The repair is all on the bottom. I'll see if I can get a picture of repair later. He's already test flown it once and said it was a lot better than it was. And we're going to try to get other people out here today to just look at it and verify. Plus the video as a backup of a way of seeing how accurate it is. Usually you'll be able to tell if it's not rising at a level of flight. That's funny, Chris Cox just has exactly the same problem with the Sportster that he made, the 4-stroke one. He's emailed me a couple times and said it was hunting, it wouldn't fly level, he has slop in the control. So if we can maybe figure out what would improve this plane, it would be something Chris Cox could use too. I could pass him on the video. If we don't learn anything, well, we're no dumber than we are a donut now, so. Amazing that we got the B-25 into the van. If it warms up later, maybe we'll run the engines here, but we're targeting, hopefully, very soon to get some flights on it, some taxi tests, some Zetron tests. So I want all that stuff working before we go put it in the air. Now, I gave Rich the laser to use to do the alignment. He says he couldn't figure out how to do it. Well, I'm not so sure. What I should have had him do is come to the house and we could have done it on video, but it's one of the things, if the flaps aren't in alignment with the elevators, it's a problem. It can be a trim problem. Now the other thing, this could be if he had one of those Bill Biles, the little adjusters, of course, it would be another way of doing it. He doesn't have that. If he had a hatch, like we have on the Spitfires and Seafires in the back, that would be another way of doing it. There's a lot of ways to do the same thing, but basically if you don't have the elevators in neutral, when the flaps are in neutral, you've got a trim handicap you've really got to work on. Now we'll see how Rich feels. Got the wing relatively level anyway, that's one good thing. Don't have to deal with too much of that. I like the way this plane looks in flight. He said he's definitely going to build another one. Now we'll find out. Maybe with a longer, pointier, more scale-like wing. Even though he's shying away from the dihedral, I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure he has the right idea. After all that work with the Lucky boxes on a B-25. Anyway, that is one of the things that would have been really good to check, and I'll check on Rich's plane in the future, is before he paints the plane, to get the laser and check the relationship of the motor to the flaps to the elevators before he paints the plane the next time. I think that'd be a really good investment in time and energy. We probably can do that on video too. I'm sure there are a lot of other people that have that little laser tool. And of course this Sunday is the first club contest of the year. Should be a lot of fun. We lose the field Saturday, the first contest is Sunday. We got a lot of stuff coming up. And we got the laser right here, so in case even if we wanted to, in an emergency, we could check it right at the field. You can see that laser in broad daylight. Now, in the last couple of days, we've had more and more practice fueling with the jet fueler, using the bladder tank. We're real happy with the way it's working so far. We still need to get a final shim on it before we can make a final fine tuning. But it looks like it's got a lot of potential. It gives a real nice smooth run. You get about 3 laps of warning before it shuts off, so there's no danger. I was afraid you wouldn't get any warning at all. That didn't happen. And I'm getting more and more used to using the jet fueler with every flight that goes by. So it just gives me one more option added into the things that we're able to experiment with, learn from, do, add to our knowledge of the world of modeling. Made up a nice little cradle here out of some, it looks like plywood or something, or cardboard. So you work on his plane at the field, change the pipe, whatever, any of the maintenance items you normally do with the models that we love to fly. Anyway, the Stuka looks like it's performing better and better with each flight that goes by. And I'm glad because I know Rich really put a lot of his heart and soul into this plane. He really put a lot of time and effort. And he's been buffing one piece at a time. It kind of looks half buffed, the third buffed. Every time I see it, more and more of it is buffed. And we've made a lot of progress with Rich's plane in the past couple of days. I decided not to include any more of the flights because, to be honest with you, everything worked well the first flight and I can condense it down to 1 or 2 storyboards. And what Rich had the biggest problem, and he made the change several times, he had, because there'll be other people that can benefit from this. And this is, I'm going to condense like 3 days of test flying into one small amount. The first thing he did when he built the plane, he didn't use the laser. The flaps were down when the elevators were neutral, so the plane always wanted to rise up. Well, that problem was cured. What he did on the bottom of the horn, and we'll put this on the video next time, he just dremeled out the wood, pulled the horn up out, and then filled this with epoxy once he had everything lined up. Well, now he's got to refinish this, maybe paint a black stripe there or something. But now with the flaps and elevators in neutral, he's so happy with the plane, he's already ordered parts from me for a new one. Now, a couple of the things, and he's got his scoop going on here. One of the things he really loves is the Noldrin DAC, where you plug the battery in the side. I kind of like that myself. We may be putting that on one of our next planes. He's already talking about another possibility of making another Stuka because he's enjoying it so much. This plane has a cardinal wing, by the way, and basically a Miss Ashley tail that's made to look like a Stuka. So the fact that he's real happy with it, I'm happy, he's happy. It's a little on the heavy side, but it certainly flies well. The wing handles the weight. This is the biggest single thing Rich has learned. When he built the plane, he knew where the CG was because it's a cardinal wing, and he decided to make these kind of scale wheel pants that really go out. If you look from the top of the plane, they're way out here. They're way further forward than anything that's shown on the plans. Well, they may be scale-like, but what's happened to them, and it's something we've gone over on a video, but I just wanted to show that how important this is to do when you're building a plane. Well, when you bend the wheels back, what happens? Now the wheel pants look funny. They look like, like somebody just stubbed their toe. So now he's going to make new wires up. Well, wait a minute. This is easy. These are the kind of things that are easy to do when you build a plane. So, I showed him the trick about holding the nose down. Well, he's going to go home and make another pair of landing gear. There's no doubt about it. With the gear this far forward, I'll bet he hasn't landed twice without becoming boom, 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 because as the plane's landing and you flare, the wheels out this far, just as soon as it touches, it pushes the nose up, angle of attack changes, and the plane goes up in the air and boom, boom, boom. Every landing, almost every one has been like that. So having the gear back here, and we've gone over that on the tapes, I don't want to go over that, but it worked. Had Rich seen that tape before he built the plane, and Rich only sees about every 6th tape because he never returns loaner tapes on time, Rich. Anyway, this is going to work for him. He also had a major problem that we test flew the plane. We flew it the second day. We flew it the third day. And here's what happened. Showed us where we pit on this parking lot. We have an oil spot. We try to use the same oil spot all the time. So I have Strega out on a parking lot. And we've already flown 3 or 4 days, and Rich is complaining, the line tension's not that good in certain spots, and gee whiz, something else, and he's moaning and groaning about little things, and I'm thinking, yeah, well, he ought to just stop whimpering, and that'd solve everything. And then he puts his plane down. And this is absolutely critical. Well, what Rich did, and Rich being Rich, loved the guy to death, but a lot of times he doesn't check. He ordered a set of 70-foot lines from Tom Morris. Well, the 70-foot lines are 70 feet, and Tom does a great job wrapping lines. I would suggest anybody buy his lines, but take into account the fact that if you tell him 70 feet, he makes the line 70 feet. Well, the way you're supposed to measure this, and at least according to the AMA, is the middle of the handle, the middle of the plane is 70 feet. That means you roughly have about 3.5 feet here, and you have some amount, depending on what kind of handle or what kind of cable you're using. The lines are never 70 feet. There's no such thing as 70 feet. The wires are usually 67, 66. So what Rich was doing was flying around on what amounted to be about 74, we measured them off, about 74.5 foot lines, and he couldn't get the plane fine trimmed. Well, once I cut his lines and rewrapped it for him, well, the plane flew great. But this has got to go. Now, the reason I say that is a lot of people, even experienced, don't realize you've got to measure the center of the plane, the center of the handle, 70 feet, and in my case, I make it 6 inches less. You know why? Because when you go to the Nats, they put these duct tape things down, and they're never accurate. Let's be realistic. They're off an inch or two, and you don't want to even be close to having a controversy. Who needs the aggravation? We're here to fly and have fun. So this is, yeah, you're right, Chicky, you're right. This is an important lesson to learn. It's a super important lesson to learn. Even Chicky knows the lesson.
Don't fly on long lines, Jacobone, or I'm going to come out here and bite your nose.
Check. And from this point on, now we can fine-tune his plane. Now we're going to run the B-25 engines the last couple of days at the field, but we've run into other problems. And I need to devote a whole morning to doing that without interruption, and I don't want to have 100 people at the field, but it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So our plan was that we're going to try to fly the plane and run the motors Saturday morning. The weekend is coming up, baby. Time to fly the B-25. I got some nice pictures in the mail from Ed Captanelli. He used to live in New Jersey. This is a true story, and he moved to Las Vegas, and then from Las Vegas he moved to lives right where Joe Ortiz does in Tucson. Anyway, a true story. This not this exact plane, but the twin to it, the original Starduster with this paint job and this Tiger 60 setup and everything. The original plane, Ed had built a second or a third one and gave the original one to Richie Tower. Now, Richie Tower and I were testing tune pipes at the time, and we thought we could use it for a test plane. Well, what happened is Richie had put the plane on the roof of his wife's car in the garage, and we went out and had some pizza. His wife came home, got in the car, backed up the car, the plane rolled off the roof and was made a mess. Well, Lucky Windy gets to fix it. He fixed it all up, and I didn't need an extra plane. I had given it to Joe Ortiz. Joe Ortiz went on to win the Reinhardt Cup with it. He liked it so much, and to show you how good my quality repair was, what happened with the repair was about 4 years later. What are you doing here? What? Get! You're molting. Feathers everywhere. What happened is 4 years later, 5 years later, Ron Connors, who's passed on now, as has Joe Ortiz, was flying a plane at the club field, and the tail came off, the wing came off, the gear blocks came out, the motor came out, the prop came off. The plane just exploded in flight. So I don't know that the plane probably wasn't under warranty at that point in time anyway. So anyway, Ed and his son has a twin. Now this might be Ed's new plane. He doesn't say, of course. He writes a caption like, hey Ed, like I live in Tucson where you can fly all year long. Forget it. I'm lucky I can afford to live in Jersey here. His new ship, the Sniper, I'm assuming it is. And Ed's workmanship is front row. Anybody that's seen one of his planes. We used to have a beauty award at the Circle Burner Club years and years ago, and you know what? Ed would win half of the time. Anyway, a nice picture here from, this is Ed, by the way, his son, and Lou Wolgast. Lou Wolgast, the prince of the Circle Burners, who now flies every day of the year, and God knows what. Last time we saw him, it was at his dad's funeral, was up here in Jersey, and we all got together. Anyway, as we get older, I guess that's just part of it. Anyway, I'm glad you guys get to fly all the time. You guys should be winning. You should be like these guys in California that win every year because they fly all year. See, we don't get to do that. I don't even get to fly today. Ed, thanks for the pictures, and we hope we'll see you. Now, we have enough comparison time now on the tanks. In fact, we've got about 5 gallons, I think, through the, what I'll call a bubble jet tank, the bubble jet carbon tank. We have quite a few flights on the round, what amounts to be the round bubble jet tank. And so I can make some comparisons. First off, because I make tanks and have done a lot of tank testing, I feel like this is one thing I should have, I can add a little knowledge to the event. Anyway, Uniflow tanks, no Uniflow tanks, vented any number of ways. Always a few of the problems that you can have. And I always put a question mark because some setups you do, some you don't. Sometimes with a Uniflow tank in the middle of the flight, you can get this kind of soft spot where the motor goes rich and then stays that way for a minute and then goes right back. Again, sometimes, and it's how the vents are arranged in the tank, and I've done it ways where some things get better, some things don't. It's always something that you're working on. Uniflow tanks tend to be relatively easy to shim. It's a very predictable, easy to figure out thing. And what typically will happen is if you replace one tank and put another tank in, you can use the same shims. So that's an advantage, somewhat of an advantage. Some of the other things that, with a Uniflow tank, you have to put vents in a plane. Well, sometimes on a semi-scale plane, you'd like not to have vents. I know Al Raby doesn't like the idea of having vents on his Mustang sticking out where the exhaust manifold should be, just as one example. Another thing is you have to, with a Uniflow tank, and you have to be able to choke the motor. Almost always, you need to allow for a big enough hole that you can put your finger in there and choke the motor. Well, now with the bubble jet tank, we've run into a couple of things. We started out thinking what we would wind up with is a tank with no air in it. That was the original, and of course everything from here applies to this too. We just don't have one in a fuselage chip. We have it in a profile. So, but the same thing applies. Is the filling, and Dub calls it a tanker. This giant syringe, a 10 or 12 ounce syringe, you absolutely must have that tanker. Without the tanker, you're never going to get a bubble jet tank to work. But some of the nice side benefits of it that we've realized are, is the steady run. And I compared this with Rich's plane the other day. Rich's plane to be sitting on the ground, and it's, as you're getting ready to launch it, and I'm sure you love that sound imitation, but there's none of that with a bubble tank. That just becomes one steady run. Now, we haven't solved the problem yet. It's not a problem, it's something we need to work on, is you get about 3 laps at the end of the pattern where the motor will go relatively lean, nowhere as near as lean as with a Uniflow tank where it goes, everybody knows that. Now, the thing is with a Uniflow tank, a lot of times you can do a loop and the tank, and it'll shut the engine off. Well, that's real nice. See, that's one of those things that six of one, half a dozen of another. I don't know that that's an advantage or a disadvantage, because with the bubble jet tank, even in the 3 laps where it's going dead lean or leaner, you can loop it, you can go fly inverted. The motor never shuts off, because it may be getting air bubbles, but it's not getting a blast of air. What happens when you do a loop? All the fuel runs to this corner of the tank away from the pickup, and it shuts the motor off. Well, that's an advantage, but not really. It's a maybe an advantage. I'm not sure that's the advantage I want. So what I've done with the last couple of test flights, and what I'm going to do for Dub next week when we move to the Circle Burner Field, is shoot some of these flights from a stationary camera just so he can hear the motor run. Right now, we're at Palisades Park, and jackhammers are going off and cars are driving through. It's not quiet like it is at the club field. But one of the nice things that I've been able to get is the shim is different on this tank. These 2 tanks didn't shim the same. I'm assuming it's because the pickup probably goes down in level flight, or that's all mystery to me now. But I know it did shim out further off the mounts. It shimmed further off the mounts, if I remember right. I have this all written down, by the way, because my memory is fading. So, relative to this, I want to keep the shims with it so I can change it right at the field. And it takes about, by the time Rich is done flying, I usually have the motor out of the plane and slide this right out. We're still going to do some tests with the round tank. Les is going to get him to make a special one up. We still have a spare bladder. We had a funny thing happen. The last couple of times that I was flying the plane, I noticed that more than the normal amount of bubbles were at the end. And I didn't know if what was happening was one of 2 things. If I possibly had a pinhole in this, and at the end it was just pulling up air. I didn't know. So I said, well, let me try it anyway. Well, I just pulled it up, let that little air, there's probably an air pocket the size of your fingernail in there. And I'll just be careful at the end of the flight and see if anything bad happens. So I filled the tank, crimped it off as I do, and flew a whole day of flying with what amounts to be a tank that had a hole in it. Nothing bad happened. Not one thing changed, except at the end of the run, I had maybe 5 or 6 laps where it was sucking the last little bit of air. But absolutely nothing all through the flight, the part of the flight that matters. And now here's where the gain is with this flight. With a bubble jet tank that I can see, if we get it shimmed perfectly and we get the compression right in the motor, let's say on a wing over pullout, typically if the nose is down, the motor should be shutting off. A lot of times when you're on the lean side of the needle, it doesn't shut off and you pull out. Well, this is very predictable. It comes right down and you can hit it almost every time. So there's little advantages, like on the outside square, it doesn't give you a blast of lean somewhere as the nose is pointing down. Any tank that has air in it, there's always a chance that right in the middle of a maneuver you can hit a burst of air. And that air leans the motor out and it ruins your timing. Now, whether we're going to go to the next level with this, we're going to certainly give it our best shot. But what we have now is already very competitive. It's already, I'm ready to go to a contest with it and play bumper cars. It's already very reliable, even with the hole in it, and I have a spare bladder, so within the next week or so I'll just make another tank and then take this one apart and see what happens. So far, everything that's happened with the bubble jet has been dead reliable, dead predictable. The needle setting is dead linear. So I can see that sometime there may be a time, and I think everybody out there knows what I want to have. I want to have my best Uniflow tank and the shims And when this bubble jet tank is fully developed, have a couple of them with the shims, go to the field someday when I'm the only one at the field, put 10 flights on this, 10 flights on that, and make a decision which one goes to the nets. Well, once we work on both of them, we're certainly going to put more time into it. This is something I really feel it's an idea that I like. First off, I love the idea that you don't need the vents in the plane. We also just need to figure out, Pete Klepsik had some ideas for a shut-off valve, so that once you fuel the plane, you can just shut it off. Now, I am not able to do that right now. Here's the side of the fuselage on Stragan. It just comes out to the needle valve and goes into the tank. And I have a filter. I wound up putting a filter here just for my own. But what you can watch is, you can watch as you start the motor and run it. Absolutely, and I mean zero. No air bubbles at all. That motor is dead steady when you're running it, and when you're setting the needle. I'm sure every person in the world has experienced this. You fill up let's pretend this isn't it. You fill up the Uniflow vent, you cap it off, you start the engine, because this is inside the plane, so you never get to see it. See, another advantage of having this outside of the plane, even though I grant you it is not attractive, but when you go to appearance judging, you probably could sneak it, just shove it inside the cowl or something, and you just have 2 holes here until we come up with something better. I've also been using forceps on this to pinch it off. Well, there's got to be some neater thing, a little shut-off valve or something. That's all cosmetic nonsense. I'll work on that later. What I want is the run character. But one of the things that's really neat, now, in Rich's case, this is a big thing. Rich goes to start the Stuka. He fuels it up, then he's got to stick his finger under here and choke it, 3 or 4, 2 or 1 or whatever, gets his bump, now he's ready to start it. Now his finger's soaking wet, there's fuel all over the nose of the plane. It starts, it's in a puddle of fuel, the little dots are blowing back on this. Kind of a nuisance. What happens with the bubble jet, you fill a plane with the forceps on it. Flip the prop a few times, there's no fuel in it, it's not going to bump. You can just, and it's got an air filter. I release the pressure, turn it 1, 2, 3, usually 3 or 4 times, put the clamps back on. Now normally that wets the filter, it wets the green air filter, and usually 1, 2, 3, 4, sometimes 10 flips, you never know. And you've got to, I don't even pay attention to it because it starts within a few seconds. But an even neater way, we've come up with an even better way, is when I fill a tank, I leave this stick out and I just let the excess fuel drain out. So it goes to just having maybe 1 ounce of pressure. I put it back on here with the clamps. Quiet bird. Now, I put the battery on the engine and just release this. And what happens, 1 drop at a time, it starts self-priming from the pressure that's in the tank. It'll almost immediately go to no pressure, but it'll self-prime the engine in a way almost that you can feel it getting wet, it bumps, hand signal, and you've got it running. So this may be an advantage. I don't know what our next step is we're going to work on, Les Demet has another tank we're going to try to get the extra bladder that I have in. The other thing that we're going to try to do, we're going to come up with, and I hope Pete Klepsik or somebody's going to have some kind of a little shut-off valve we can use up here. I hope that's going to be one of the things that we can, or if somebody knew a place, you could buy little tiny forceps that would pinch the line. Little tiny ones. See, the ones I have these like alligator teeth, and they're going to eventually put a hole in that tubing. So what I'd like, maybe get some with rounded edges. I have to find a place that has medical supplies and buy a little tiny set, maybe the size of the end of your finger. But this is a whole routine. The reason I'm going over this, it took me the better part of a week to come up with all these little routines. Now that I have them, this morning's flying session was basically idiot-proof. It was fuel it and fly. And I think we have made some improvements that ultimately we're going to be able to use in our own top-of-the-line planes, not only the test planes, and very significant in the 4-strokes. In a 4-stroke plane, to have this ability that at the last, see what happens with a 4-stroke. A 4-stroke doesn't like to see an air bubble. So what happens, you do this loop of the thing, you get over here, right here, the motor usually shuts off, right where you can't recover it. Well, with this tank, it'll never shut off unless you don't take the air out. It'll run right to the end. So hopefully, if nothing else, you don't have to carry that extra ounce of fuel that you normally do. On a 4-stroke, you usually have to carry enough fuel that it doesn't shut off in a clover. Even Carlos has lost a plane. He lost his red Miss LA because it shut off. He was flying, and it just shut off. It just gets a big enough air bubble and a 4-stroke will shut off. Anyway, hope this information is going to grow. We're going to add to it constantly, and by working with Dubjet on both the motors, the pipes, all the little things that contribute to this, is when you ultimately get this stuff, it should be turnkey. And that's the goal we have in the back of our mind. Now, because we want to test run the engines, I thought I'd have somebody come over. And I called 3 or 4 people. They all had to work. They all had some kind of obligation. So I got a little bit of an idea. I figured I'd set up the stooge. Well, guess what? The stooge doesn't fit. Tail is too high in the air. So I need to improvise something here. If I'm going to ever use the stooge, I need to make longer arms for the stooge or something like that. Or just, well, I'm going to see what I can improvise here, but of course it would be nice if we had a helper. Somebody just magically shows up. I wanted to get a run on the engines, make sure that everything is clean and ready to go so we don't waste everybody's time, especially if the weather is flyable Saturday. But hard to know if this is going to work the way I want. Now, I found some aluminum tubing. It's the thing I used to skim the pond. It looks like it'll be the right size. I need to get the height, of course. I want it to come up over the top at least an inch. But that looks like it'll work, and then I'll have to make it that I can, because I don't want it this big when I'm working with the other planes. It'll fall down and hit the flap. So you just never win. It's unbelievable. Anyway, it looks like this will work the more I think about it. I guess this is going to be the only, so I can't be too fussy here. I have to take what I can get and live with it. Now the final thing here, and this is the things you don't anticipate. Now, obviously in the future I could make longer arms, but I don't have any of this material. I'll get Mike to make some. That's one thing we can do. What I did do, I made these little arms up. Let's just see, we want the screw in the back, I'm assuming. We need to put some tape or something just temporary to hold this up here. Actually, we could do that. Put a little hole for the sheetrock screw. And I'm hoping that's going to be long enough. Now, I need to get some of this pipe foam. I hope the fuselage fits in after all this work. If not, I'll have to cut some of this away, I guess. Or I'll have to make another stooge. Mike's not going to want to hear that. Anyway, we can put these screws in now. Oh, details. Now, I doubt that I'd be using a stooge much, but when I do want to use a stooge, like right now, to test run the engines, I'll make a trim change and run up the field for one quick flight. I want to have that option, so anyway, what I'll do is I'll screw these legs in place, then I'll need to just double check that this height. I don't want to have this height right here, and you can imagine that I have to hope that, well, I may be able to come up with a system where I can use these long arms on the other planes. I guess we're going to find out. Or, in the worst of all worlds, Mike, you're going to make a special stooge, a B-25 stooge. And the next thing here, now we know the stooge will work. I want to fuel one engine up at a time, get one engine started, try to get some kind of a needle set. Same thing on the other engine. And then I want to run them both with the throttles and see if we're even close to having them synchronized. That would be the next step. We got a lot of little things I've learned right away. I thought I'd get away with those scale exhausts. Well, it's just spitting oil on everything. It's terrible. I don't want to pursue that any longer. That's one thing. I put those little rubber guys on until I can come up with something better. Now, I want to run the engines a couple more times, clean the tanks, and the first couple of times I ran this, wow, stuff was coming out of the tanks. The one tank was clean because I'd already run it. The other one only had a few runs on it, but it sat with the oil sitting in. I don't know if that contributed to it. Little things we have to work out, nothing big, just it's a good thing we're doing it on a nice, cool, shady day. The fish are keeping us company, Chicky's keeping us company. I'll let it cool down in between runs, of course.
Synchronized, and I don't have them synchronized right yet. It's easier to do with the cowls off.
As the day grinds on, what's happening? It really is difficult. Now, see, because I'm not used to doing this, I'm out here floundering around trying to get these synchronized. And what will happen when I get them both running at the same time, and I get them both down to idle, one will shut off, then I speed that one up, then the other one shuts off, then they both shut off. This is where I really could use a career in, if I had to fly Dub Jet in and let him do it. I ought to fly somebody and fly Superman in. Anyway, I've been taking a break in between rounds here, having a cup of coffee, but what I want to do is put the cowls back on. Everything's cleaned and flushed now, so it's a question of now, the only part of this left is to get both motors running and idling so one doesn't shut off, and I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to do that today, but I'll give it my best shot. Well, you probably can tell I'm still not happy with the way these synchronize up. I'm just going to have to work on it tomorrow, the next time I get to work on it. And it looks like until we can get them synchronized and running the same here, it's pointless to even think about it. Well, we'll give it another shot tomorrow. Now after making a few phone calls and having a little chat room of my own here, one of the things I realized, and I may have to abandon this, is first thing I learned with this, the first day of test running, I need to have something, maybe not this, but something to direct this exhaust down away. Otherwise the whole wing gets full of oil and I don't like that. I'm not happy about that. Second thing is I'm pretty sure, not totally sure, but pretty sure, I guess is the right word, that I think we made an error in calculation when we came up with the carb sizes for this. Because having looked at some of the other choices, the Venturis and things, I realized these carburetors are carburetors that really are a lot bigger and they're really made for, let's call it, high performance. One of the things is with these big giant carburetors, it's very touchy to needle, very touchy to, totally different than it is with the Venturis. So what I'm going to think about is the possibilities before I actually fly it. Maybe I'm going to have to put this off and not fly it, sadly, is getting the smaller carburetors installed. This is just for all practical purposes, and I did spend the better part of a day. It just wasn't reliable enough to get them synchronized. And what would happen is one would start running rich and one would start running lean, and I'm sure that was air. First, exactly what we talked about the the bubble tanks. The jet bubble jets, whatever we're going to call them. Now here's a perfect candidate, and it may be that what I'm going to do before I even fly the plane is get those tanks or something. We're going to do something. I'm just not going to, just look for the cheap way out. It really isn't. Well, I'd rather not have a bad first day than and rush it. We get to this point here, and it looks like the only miscalculation I've made, and possibly one of the things our friend Ron at the hobby shop thought as a stopgap, just to see if our theory was correct. He said, put green air filters on the carburetors and see if it gets better or worse. Well, I think that's what we're going to do. We're going to run down a hobby shop tonight, pick up some of those green air filters, just to see if the motor runs get more stable, and I'm sure that's what's going to happen. Then I think the trick is going to be to get Tom to, at his convenience, set me up with the smaller carburetors, the ones that we had 3 sizes. These were the mid-size, and maybe, again, I'll know more tomorrow, but right now I'd say for the first day of getting the engines run, we've run into what amounts to be 1 or 2 problems that both look solvable, and in the worst of all worlds, if the weather really looks like it's going to be terrific, I can put the Venturis in the plane. I mean, as the worst possible scenario here, and fly it without the cowlings, whatever. But see, I don't want to do that. That kind of defeats the whole purpose. It's like taking your Cadillac for a dirt bike ride or something. I don't know. Something wrong with that. I'm not sure I know what. I think what we're going to do is just count our blessings that we got this far, this soon. Not take any chance that anything's going to go wrong. It's been such a good adventure so far. I'd hate to lose it because of impatience. Now, sadly, we're not going to be able to fly the B-25, of course, but today what I'm going to do is pull this apart and make another jet. I have another bladder to make another tank, and I want to have these in all the planes. So I'm very happy with the way the runs are. This is one of the things I want to start working on, developing this a little further. And so it's sad that we end this tape not having flown the B-25, but what we're going to try to do in the next couple of days, we've basically lost the field at Palisade Park. We're done for the year. And that's unfortunate because we don't really have a place to fly this now until the fall, so that's kind of disappointing. And you can't just take it somewhere and fly it in grass or in the back of a schoolyard or something. You need a field. So we're going to look at other possibilities, and of which I haven't figured out yet, but one of the things I'm planning on right now, and we'll probably continue this on the next tape, is we're probably going to do away with the tanks. What we did after a couple of days of running these engines, I resolved, and I would run them with the cowls off and look at air bubbles coming through. And what would happen when both engines were running, it'd just be constant air bubbles because of the resonance of 2 engines. And isn't it wonderful that we're working on these tanks that we don't have air bubbles with? It's almost like we planned it this way. We didn't plan it this way, but we're going to be working on this further. Dub is going to make up some more hardware. Dub and Dennis make up some more parts for us so we can make another set of tanks for this. And this will be flown with the jet bubble, or bubble jets, whatever we call them. I don't. We have to come up with a name for these. Tank in this plane has worked so well that I would ask anybody that has an old plane and they want to test this. Well, I wouldn't even think you have to do this. All I'm going to figure out is a way to get this inside the body on the next plane, and or maybe get a little shut-off valve. And Pete Klepsik's going to try to look at that, come up with some answer for me, and maybe somebody else will come up with an answer. But this has so far been one of the more successful things that's come out of this last season. Is, first off, we love this motor, this low time motor. You can hug him, kiss him, just forever. He's the best. But we're going to be working with it, and starting next week when we're at the club field, we're going to be shooting some video of the flight so you can hear the run character. This has exceptional run character. I would say of all the pipe motors I have experience so far, I like this one. And we've named this guy. We've come up with a cute little pet name for him. His name is Chickadooley. Chicky, I hope you're not jealous. Probably is. Anyway, we'll see you on the next tape. development takes time, and I wish it was that I'm reporting, we had something finished here, but unfortunately in a shop this busy, we're working from project to project. And the other thing is we still have to keep making parts, for sale, so we don't have to go work at Home Depot. So we'll see you on the next video. Thanks for joining us. And special thanks to Dub and to Dennis, really, for helping us. Bob Zambelli, geez, just everybody that's helped make parts. Sergio, can't even make the list. Hampshire. Without these people's help, this project would have never come to fruition. And we'll see you on the next tape. Before we leave the tape, I see we got about a minute left. I wanted to make a funny, it's not funny, it's true. I had the plane sitting out in the back of the van where Les was making up the pads, and we had the whole thing in a van. And we decided we were going to, take a ride to the hobby shop. Well, we went up to Ron's hobby shop, and it was in the back of the van. And I said, let's see how it travels. Does it move around? What happens? And in the course of going up there, we stopped and we had lunch. And the other thing, it's parked in a parking lot, and there's a guy walking by, and out of the corner of his eye, he sees the thing, and he almost trips and falls over. You just don't expect to look in the back of the of any Windstar, especially a green one. I purposely bought green so it would kind of blend into the scenery so I wouldn't get tickets. Here's this incognito Windstar, and all of a sudden this guy's walking by, and what's wrong? I think he saw aliens or something. Anyway, just thought you'd enjoy that story. That was funny. And it won't be long, and we'll have a bubble jet tank in this guy. We're going to, hopefully, as we learn all the little idiosyncrasies of these tanks, and boy, Dub has got that worked out. But the easiest thing would be if we hadn't already built these planes to just use the stock tank. That worked perfect on a profile. They just don't fit in these planes. That's the problem. And especially in the Typhoon, that would have to be a special scenario. But anyway, we'll get these done. We have a mold. We'll make some carbon bodies up this week. And it's ironic that that's going to be one of the cures for what I hope is going to make the B-25 ultimately a lot of fun to fly. And of course, coming up real soon is going to be the Brodak fly-in.